Today we're taking a look at a couple of sealed Sky Commanders, the Defenders of the High Frontier. This came out in 1987. They were made by Kenner, and the whole premise of these toys was one that really appealed to me at the time. I remember being really taken with the whole notion of setting up these elaborate strings and cables and tracks and having vehicles and figures that slid along them. It just looked awesome on the commercials, and it was the first time I remember just being truly and completely disappointed by the massive tangles and knots that was the reality of this toy line. So firstly here I've got Rollerball, which is the name of the backpack, with General Summit, who was the leader of the ragtag group of mountaineers in the high frontier that were kind of the heroes of the line. It advertises the gravity lock system with cushioned pads, which is really just a rubber C-clamp. I'm pretty sure it's just a bunch of fancy names for the kind of junk that they gave you to actually try to set up what this line was supposed to be able to do. Kind of advertises it here. There's a kind of a plastic loop that you wrapped around things, and they had a long cable that you could hook up. What was neat was the characters themselves even have cables attached to them. I think it was called their lifeline or something like that in the cartoon, and they would kind of throw that up onto these kind of larger neon colored lines to save themselves from peril. General Summit is the fearless leader of the Sky Commanders and a master of military strategy. He's got a truly horrific face here. One of the strange things I remember about this line was there's way more heroes than bad guys. Like, there was only 2 bad guy backpacks and 4, counting this one, of the rugged mountaineering heroes. I'm gonna crack this guy open and see what we have inside here. From what I remember of the cartoon was there was General Summit, who's very subtly named, and General Plague, I think, was the villain, who was, well, they were all in this newly discovered continent that was called, I just referred to it as the High Frontier, I believe, that had some energy source that was Theta 7, something like that, I think. And whoever had that energy source would rule the world, of course. So it was really just kind of a arms race for a resource, kind of like a lot of the Transformers was about with Energon. So this is the star of the show, this particular package here. This is the Rollerball backpack. Of course, there's a random laser cannon here. Not sure exactly what these are for, but I assume you could take guns off of other parts and put them in there. There's some kind of a ratchet here, so you could have him positioned different ways, but the figures, which now to me look like these kind of rejects from the Running Man. Actually, one of my favorite parts in the line was that you could take their lifelines off and get them stuck around trees and stuff like that, and have the poor guys hang helplessly from. I remember having to take scissors to some of mine because they just got so hopelessly tangled. And that was a big problem with these guys, was the amount of setup that was required. You'd have to move furniture around to get everything. I believe you got around 6 feet of this kind of nylon cable. It's not too stiff or anything like that, which is good. But it came with this clamp here that you'd have to find something to anchor it to, and then run it along, and then find something on the other end that was only 6 feet away that you could wrap this belt around and kind of lock that in. And the idea was you could kind of daisy chain them together and stuff to make longer ones, but I remember finding it was just nearly impossible to get things all together without moving furniture around and really irritating my parents. He's just not going to stand up. These backpacks weigh probably twice what the figure does. And that was another problem with these lines, is you had to have it fairly taut because they have a bit of heft to them, and if there was any give in the string, they wouldn't slide. They'd just sit there. The General Summit came with this too, the protectors of the High Frontier. I think I was saying defenders earlier, but my bad. Looks like it's mostly just a very large catalog for the other toys in the line. And you can see there's these two that are Raiders. It seems like a period in the 80s where every bad guy outfit was called Raiders. They didn't even put any thought into it at all. But you can see everything else is kind of the heroes' McDonald's colors here. On the back of the catalog, it's just kind of this large, very comic book art battle scene of the bad guys being hopelessly outnumbered by guys in telephone booths or something. And next we have one of the larger vehicles. This is the cable cannon with Commander Pete Crane. So they all have very direct names relating to some kind of elevation or climbing action. Again, they're advertising the gravity system with cushion pads, so parents think they won't ruin their furniture. This is a larger vehicle with a kind of an underslung seat, and they didn't have any articulation. They were a lot like mask figures where they just kind of sat there with their feet sticking straight out like they look like children. It's got these guns that are as big as him on this thing, and oh god, it's got one of these. You had to find something that was exactly the width that it would allow the hook to these that you could attach, the cables or the battle tracks to, which, nothing I ever had ever worked for that. Maybe I just had very wide furniture, I don't know. I also remember one time I stored some of these guys in a Tupperware case that had a slinky in it. Cut the thing open, and they got so hopelessly tangled, I think they probably just got scissors taken to them and thrown away. But, oh, sealed on a couple sides here. Get this open. Okay. Alright. This is 1987, which is later for Kenner. This is around the time that they were bought by Tonka, actually. And the quality certainly did not improve greatly with this line. So everything's just kind of wrapped up, and figure himself, who again looks like he's ready to start running on the game grid, is particularly wide-stanced individual here. Spent too long on the horses before he went to the High Frontier, it looks like. This is the, I've already forgotten the name of this thing, cable cannon itself. Looks like. I assume these just pop on. Yep. Sort of. And they really just kind of sit on a ball joint, even though they don't rotate at all, which is pretty cheap. There's a mechanism here, and on the back for the missiles that I assume are supposed to run up and down the cable when you got this thing suspended. But these are my biggest gripe about these things, is these things, because you see it's only that wide, and if the thing was too thin, it would droop and you just get a lot of slack in your line, and if it was too thick, you'd end up cracking these things, because a lot of these gimmicks that it had relied on just friction, and they're all very rigid plastic, so when those things snap, it's just done. It's just one thing I will say about collecting these is that they are about impossible to display because they don't do anything. It's like they can't have them sit because they're designed to be hanging all the time. Let's watch this guy's legs stick out. Here. Get him in his little clip. And he hangs helplessly with no visible controls over his thing that's supposed to slide around on cables. And I assume these just, yep, I just clip in. Looks like either one goes on either side. Yeah. See the instructions really quick. It's only a short thing, and you know, you can have a guy where they won't hang like that. Yeah, it's just the same instructions about the loop attaching to the, what do they call these? Outposts. Yeah, I'm not sure what was supposed to attach here, if anything. I guess you could probably pull guns off of stuff if you wanted to and just shove them in. Yeah. Wow. And this is talking about how the missiles fire up and down either way on the track. Seems kind of a scorched earth policy if anybody's on your safety line at all. So now here comes the real test, where we try to set these up and watch them slide around. Just wanted to point out, just trying to untangle one of these things right off of the spindle, and you can see how well that's going already. The connecting end has already snapped. Like I was saying, these things do not, even though they're required to bend, they don't deal with stress at all. This actually came right out of the box already broken. Alright, so after moving a 7-foot tall cat tree and the couch over here, I was able to tie these two ends together. My very own high frontier now. So let's take General Summit and attach him to a cable and give him some help. Yes. Very exciting stuff. This is the sum total of what this backpack is capable of. Let's see if we can reposition him, if that makes any difference. Well, he moves better that way, so let's get some action shot. There he goes. Good job. Feels safer already. And secondly, the cable cannon, which kind of sits. There's an added trick to this one because the missiles have to also sit within the line. That, see, it doesn't want to go into the secondary slot here. See if I can force it in there with a pen. There we go. Oh no, I'm marking up the cable. Don't care. So it looks like this one will actually, that's much cooler. At least it actually slides. And now test the, but you see, even though this line is secured by very tightly, it's still causing bend in the line just from the sheer weight of the vehicle. It's never going to work very well, and if you have a perfectly straight line, you can't have them, you know, slide back and forth on the gravity. But let's try the missiles. Okay, it doesn't work. And the second one, wow, what a great feature. Let's try this front one again. Might take two hands. No, it just, the mechanism just doesn't work anymore. Who knows if it ever really did. I guess the only other thing to do is to show off the lifeline feature on the figures with General Summit here. So they had first one hook on the top that you could use, so they can also hook to the cables and awkwardly slide down. What I liked about them was that it's of a pretty elastic-like material, so they really would wrap quite well around things, which That's why I ended up losing a few characters to this. But I believe if you get a good toss, they wrap around really well. Well, this is the mess that is Sky Commanders. You can kind of see why this line didn't take off. And I know they had bigger plans for it, but it's not really a whole lot to say except that I remember all the frustrations were valid. Thanks for watching.